Before you seek healing, ask yourself one question: what do I already have that I am not seeing? In this life, pain is not optional. It visits all of us. But suffering is often the echo of a mind that has forgotten to appreciate what remains. When you walk the path of self-cultivation, you begin to realize the emotion of pain and the emotion of gratitude cannot live in the same space. One pulls you down into resistance. The other lifts you into acceptance. And the moment you choose to see the blessing inside the difficulty, the grip of that pain begins to loosen. Gratitude is not a reaction. It is a practice. It is the discipline of returning again and again to what is, not what was or what might have been. And when your awareness lives in the present moment, anchored in appreciation, the things that once hurt you begin to lose their power. So, today we explore a simple truth: you cannot be broken by the same world you are grateful to live in. Pain may knock, but gratitude is the door you choose to open. Gratitude is a state of mind that alters the way we perceive everything around us. When a person cultivates gratitude deeply and consistently, it acts as a lens through which all life experiences, pleasant or painful, are filtered. In moments of discomfort, adversity, or hardship, most individuals react from a place of resistance. They push back against reality, against what has already occurred, and in doing so, they create suffering. But when a person shifts their attention from resistance to recognition, from complaint to appreciation, the inner experience changes fundamentally. The pain may still be present, but it does not dominate the mind. Instead of amplifying hurt through constant mental repetition, gratitude interrupts that cycle and returns the mind to a more grounded, peaceful state. Imagine standing in the rain. You can curse the sky for the clouds, for the water soaking your clothes, or you can notice the freshness of the air, the rhythm of the droplets, the life that this water brings to the earth. The reality is the same, but the experience is completely different. Pain, similarly, is part of the human condition. But the inner narrative surrounding pain is optional. And this is where gratitude becomes the tool that transforms pain into presence. When the mind is grateful, it is not occupied with what is missing. It is not obsessed with the unfairness of life. It is instead centered on what is still available, what is still beautiful, what is still possible. Many people wait for pain to pass before they allow themselves to be grateful. They believe gratitude is a reward for comfort, a celebration after the suffering ends. But true inner strength is revealed when a person can be grateful while hurting. Not because they enjoy the pain, but because they understand the temporary nature of all things. Pain passes. Everything does. And when the awareness remains anchored in gratitude, it does not sink under the weight of the storm. It floats, it endures, it observes. This observation is not passive, it is powerful, because through it, you are choosing where your mind dwells. To be grateful in difficult moments is not to pretend that everything is fine. It is not denial. It is a deeper wisdom that sees value even in difficulty. When you are sick, gratitude might arise for the body parts that are still working. When you are heartbroken, gratitude might appear for the love that was once felt and the capacity you still have to feel deeply. Even in loss, there is something that remains. And focusing on what remains rather than what is gone is the path to resilience. Because energy flows where attention goes. And when your attention rests in gratitude, it becomes the soil from which new strength grows. This practice of gratitude is not emotional. It is not dependent on mood. It is a decision made again and again in silence and stillness. It is a training. Like breathwork, like meditation, like martial arts, gratitude must be cultivated. When the body is in pain, the first instinct is to tighten, to resist. But in martial arts, when you tense, you become stiff and breakable. When you relax into movement, you become fluid, adaptable. The same applies to mental pain. Gratitude is the mind's way of relaxing into the moment. It does not remove the pain. It removes the resistance to pain. And without resistance, hurt becomes sensation rather than suffering. In the monastery, young disciples are taught to bow in gratitude before every meal, before every training session, even after falling during practice. Not because every moment is joyful, but because every moment is an opportunity. And the ones who train their minds to see opportunities in discomfort are the ones who evolve fastest. Pain is a teacher. Gratitude is the classroom. Together, they build character. Not just toughness, but clarity. Not just endurance, but humility. So when life gives you something you did not expect, especially something difficult, the question is not, why me? But, what now? The answer to that question begins with gratitude. Gratitude for the breath that continues. Gratitude for the lesson that is unfolding. Gratitude for the fact that you are aware enough to even notice your pain, because even awareness is a gift. The more you practice this perspective, the more you realize that pain no longer controls you. It visits, but it does not stay. It may touch you, but it does not define you. And eventually you reach a place within where gratitude becomes your default, and in that space, pain loses its sharpness. It still arrives, but it arrives into a mind that is already full. A mind that sees more than the pain. A mind that sees the entire picture. The mind is often the battlefield where pain either takes root or dissolves. It is not the external event that causes prolonged suffering, but the internal interpretation of that event. When gratitude enters the mind, it acts as a quiet but powerful force that changes how we respond to life. Instead of fixating on what's wrong, the mind begins to notice what is still right. This shift in focus creates emotional space, and in that space, healing becomes possible. When we direct our attention with intention, we begin to discover that pain does not have to dominate our lives. Gratitude becomes the anchor that holds us steady when everything else feels uncertain. Modern life teaches us to chase outcomes, to measure our worth by achievements, possessions, or status. In this pursuit, we become disconnected from the present moment. We forget to appreciate the simple truths, the ability to breathe, to move, to think, to feel. Gratitude restores this connection. It brings the mind back to now. And in the now, pain has less power. It is only when we mentally travel into the past or worry about the future that pain multiplies. Gratitude is rooted in the present. It asks, what is available to me right now that I can be thankful for? Even if everything seems chaotic, even if nothing is certain, there is always something small and real to hold on to. Pain often feels personal. It isolates us. It makes us believe that we are alone in our experience. But when we practice gratitude, we reconnect not only with ourselves but with others. We begin to see that suffering is part of the human condition. Everyone experiences loss, disappointment, failure, and grief. Gratitude allows us to see the shared humanity in this truth. And from that awareness, compassion grows. First toward others and then toward ourselves. We stop judging our pain. We stop fighting it. Instead, we allow it to exist without letting it consume us. Gratitude makes space for both pain and peace to coexist in the same moment. There is a misconception that being grateful means being passive or naive. But true gratitude requires strength. It is easy to complain, to blame, to focus on what's lacking. It takes discipline to find something good when things are falling apart. That discipline becomes a daily practice. Just like training the body, we train the mind to return again and again to what uplifts rather than what weighs us down. And as the mind becomes stronger, it becomes less reactive. Pain might still arise, but it no longer provokes the same emotional storm. Gratitude acts like a filter. It softens the impact and restores clarity. In many traditions, gratitude is seen as the gateway to wisdom. When you are grateful, your mind is quiet. It is not busy comparing, wanting, or resisting. In that quiet, insight can arise. You begin to understand that nothing is permanent. Every situation, no matter how painful, will shift. Gratitude does not make the pain disappear, but it prevents the mind from becoming trapped in it. You realize that the pain is only one part of the story, not the whole story. And in seeing the whole picture, your sense of identity begins to shift. You are not just someone who is hurting. You are someone who is growing. Gratitude also gives us control in situations where we feel powerless. We may not be able to change the circumstance, but we can change how we relate to it. That choice is a form of power, a quiet, steady kind of power that comes from within. It says, I will not let this experience harden me. I will not let it close my heart. I will use it to deepen my appreciation for life. And in doing so, we transform pain from an obstacle into a stepping stone. The practice of gratitude becomes not only a healing path, but a way of living rooted in awareness, strength, and grace. There is a silence within us that cannot be touched by external events. It is the part of us that watches, that observes, that remains still even when the world around us moves in chaos. This inner stillness is awakened through the practice of gratitude. When a person learns to be grateful, especially in times of adversity, they begin to access that silent center. The noise of suffering becomes quieter. The mind, which is often scattered between regrets of the past and fears of the future, starts to settle. It becomes focused, intentional, and aware of the present. And in this awareness, pain loses its grip. Because pain thrives in chaos, in scattered thoughts, in uncontrolled emotions. But in presence, pain becomes manageable. It is no longer a wave crashing over us. It becomes a ripple on a still lake. Gratitude does not require that everything be perfect. It does not ask for a life free of conflict or loss. It asks only for a willingness to see what is still whole, still working, still beautiful. And when the mind is trained to seek these things out, even during difficulty, it builds a kind of inner resilience that cannot be shaken by external storms. The muscles of the body grow stronger through resistance. In the same way, the mind grows stronger when it chooses gratitude in the face of discomfort. This strength is not loud. It does not shout or prove itself. It is calm, enduring, and deeply rooted. Every human being will face pain. This is the unavoidable truth of existence. But not every human being will respond to that pain with wisdom. Some will collapse. Others will grow bitter. And some will rise. What separates them is not the amount of pain they experience, but the meaning they give to it. Gratitude helps shape that meaning. It transforms pain into a teacher rather than a punishment. It reframes every difficulty as a lesson in awareness, in humility, in presence. And when we see pain this way, it no longer becomes something we run from. It becomes something we learn from. The practice of gratitude also slows down the mind. In a world that moves fast, that constantly pushes us toward the next thing, the next goal, the next distraction, gratitude asks us to pause, to breathe, to notice. In that pause, we find clarity. We begin to see that most of our suffering is not caused by the moment itself, but by our resistance to it. We want things to be different. We want life to match our expectations. But life does not follow our script. It unfolds on its own terms. And gratitude teaches us to work with life rather than against it. To see what is instead of obsessing over what should be. In difficult times, gratitude becomes a form of inner refuge. It is the space we return to when everything else feels unstable. We may not be able to control the loss, the change, the hardship, but we can always return to something we appreciate. A kind word, a deep breath, the feeling of the sun on the skin, the fact that we are still here, still able to choose how we respond. This return to appreciation is not denial of difficulty. It is the recognition of something deeper, that even in the darkest moments, there is a light inside that cannot be extinguished. Gratitude also deepens our awareness of what truly matters. When we go through pain, the superficial layers of life begin to fall away. We realize how much we took for granted. We see the value of the people around us, the quiet moments, the health we once ignored. Pain becomes a mirror, and gratitude allows us to look into that mirror with honesty and without judgment. We begin to realign our values. What once seemed urgent becomes less important. What once felt ordinary becomes sacred. This shift in perspective does not happen all at once. It is gradual but powerful, and it leads to a more meaningful, intentional life. As we practice gratitude daily, even in small ways, we are reprogramming the mind. The habitual tendency to complain, to compare, to dwell in negativity slowly weakens. New neural pathways are formed. The brain starts to notice blessings automatically. The heart opens more often, and the body, which responds to the mind's signals, begins to relax. Stress levels drop, tension softens, healing begins. Not because the external pain has disappeared, but because the internal resistance has. This is the true transformation. It does not require grand changes. It begins with something as simple as saying thank you. For the moment, for the breath, for the chance to grow. Gratitude practiced in this way becomes more than an attitude. It becomes a way of being, a form of quiet strength that allows us to walk through life with grace, even when the road is steep and the weight is heavy. When we experience pain, the natural instinct is to close. We close our hearts, we tighten our thoughts, we shut down emotionally to protect ourselves. But in doing so, we also block out the very energy that could help us heal. Gratitude is the antidote to that closure. It softens the inner armor we build around pain and gently opens us to the possibility that something good can still come from what we are experiencing. This opening is not naive, it is courageous. It says, even though this hurts, I will remain open to learning, to feeling, to growing. And in that openness, healing becomes not just possible, but inevitable. There is a deep intelligence in the human body and mind. Every experience we go through, no matter how painful, leaves an imprint. That imprint becomes a part of our story, but it does not have to become a scar that defines us. With gratitude, we revisit these experiences not with bitterness, but with curiosity and reverence. We begin to understand that every challenge shaped us, every loss refined us, every disappointment redirected us. Gratitude allows us to see that nothing was wasted. Even the pain had a purpose. And this recognition frees us from the victim mindset. We no longer see ourselves as people who were broken. We begin to see ourselves as people who were refined by fire. Gratitude also creates connection. When we are stuck in our pain, we often feel separate from others. We believe no one else could understand what we are going through. But when we reflect on what we are still grateful for, we tap into our shared humanity. We realize that others, too, have suffered. Others have loved and lost, have fallen and risen again. Gratitude builds a bridge between isolation and connection. It reminds us that we are never truly alone in our struggles. That shared awareness creates empathy, and empathy is what brings people closer, even in silence. Practicing gratitude in times of pain also sharpens our awareness. When things are going well, we often move through life on autopilot. But when we are hurting, every small moment becomes magnified. A kind gesture, a moment of peace, a gentle word. These things take on greater meaning. Gratitude helps us notice them, appreciate them, and store them in our hearts. This deepened sensitivity does not weaken us. It enriches us. It brings depth to our experience and teaches us how to be present, even when it's difficult. That presence becomes a refuge, a sanctuary we can return to again and again. There is a simplicity to gratitude that makes it powerful. It does not require elaborate rituals or perfect circumstances. It begins with a thought, a breath, a shift in focus. It can be practiced silently, inwardly, without needing anything outside of ourselves. And the more often we practice it, the more natural it becomes. Over time, gratitude becomes a habit, then a reflex, and eventually a way of seeing the world. This perspective gives us freedom, not because life stops being hard, but because we stop being defined by what is hard. Even in the darkest moments, gratitude gives us something to hold on to. It is the quiet reminder that not everything is lost, that there is still something worth noticing, still something worth honoring. It offers stability when everything else feels uncertain. And in that stability, we find strength. Not the strength to escape what we feel, but the strength to stay present with it, to let it move through us without destroying us. Gratitude becomes the ground beneath our feet, allowing us to walk forward with clarity, with purpose, and with a sense of peace that is not dependent on circumstances, but rooted in awareness. When life brings pain, the first impulse is often to resist, to tense, to withdraw, to ask why. But through the practice of gratitude, we begin to understand that pain is not the enemy. It is a messenger. It invites us to look deeper, to shift our perspective, to return to what truly matters. Gratitude does not deny hardship, it transforms our relationship to it. It reminds us that even in the presence of difficulty, there is still something to appreciate, something to learn, something to honor. We do not need to wait for perfect conditions to be grateful. In fact, the most powerful form of gratitude is the one that arises when things are imperfect, when we are tired, uncertain, or hurting. Because in those moments, gratitude becomes more than a feeling. It becomes a choice, a discipline, a way of being. And when we live this way, pain loses its power to break us. We become grounded, clear, and open. We see life not only for its challenges, but for its gifts. And in this awareness, we step into a deeper strength, a strength that says, I may be hurting, but I am still grateful. I may have fallen, but I am still awake. I may have been tested, but I am not defeated, because no matter what life brings, a grateful heart cannot be broken. It can only expand.